For the second time in less than a week, folks across the Triad are dealing with power outages. When your power is out, there's not a whole lot you can do but just wait. To help give some insight into the power restoration process, we have Jeff Brooks from Duke Energy joining us for the next little bit to answer your text questions. If you have a question, we want you to text them to us now, 336-379-5775. Remember, this is a text-only question. All right, Jeff, the first question we have here is, have power outages today been repaired so quickly because so many crews were already on standby?
Well, I think that's absolutely part of it. We did bring in a significant number of resources from around not only the Carolinas, but all over the country. And we even found out today we had a crew from Canada that was down here in the Carolinas as well. So they came from a long way to join us. But that did certainly help. And I think as well, the weather really worked in our favor this time. We saw the storms kind of ease up on the rain about midday, and that allowed us to get ahead of the outages. And that was a little different than the scenario we forecast, where we thought we would see a lot more persistent rain like we did over the weekend, and those outages continue to climb. And so maybe Mother Nature gave us a little bit of a break during the day today.
Yeah, that's not a bad thing for sure, especially for all those people who dealt with all those outages earlier. Well, this is a follow-up question to the crews. They say, how long will crews from out of town be in the area? Do they head home tomorrow? And do we see a charge in our bill for those crews from out of state coming in here to do work?
Well, I'll try to break those down a little bit. The crews have been coming in really over the last couple of days. Some of them stayed generally in the area because they were here working already. We saw some crews today come up from Charlotte. Some of the Florida crews that came to the Carolinas came up into the Triad today from Charlotte and are working in this area. We're evaluating kind of what the next steps are. We've still got a chance tonight of freezing rain in the evening this evening, and that can cause some more potential outages. So we have to remain vigilant. You know, one good thing I heard today, and I don't know if you heard it, but a lot of sound of ice falling from trees, and that's a good sign. That means we had some melting today. So whatever we have tonight isn't necessarily building on top of what already is accumulated. We got a little bit of help today. As far as costs of a storm, you know, our focus right now is on restoring power. Certainly there is a cost to restoring power after these big natural events, but those are really things that we figure out a good while from now. There is a certain amount of money already built into your rates that accounts for some amount of storm restoration. But when we have a major hurricane or we have a major storm, we sometimes have in the past looked at needs to increase, but usually that's done fairly far out in the future and oftentimes over a long period of time. So there's a lot of stuff that we'll have to think about later from these storms, but right now our focus is on getting everybody's power back on and getting the heat back on for everybody.
This person is asking, repair-wise, can you compare jobs being done today for repairs to the damage work that was done over the weekend?
I think in many ways these were very similar storms in concept, in the sense that they were almost entirely ice events. And those ice events are some of the most fascinating kind of storms, because you can be a few miles away and maybe experience 1 degree temperature change and have no impact whatsoever, versus the people who were out for 4 days over the weekend, right? And so location really does affect the impacts we see. And the types of outage we see in an ice storm are oftentimes smaller and more numerous. So in other words, the weekend storm, we were restoring more than 4,000 individual outage locations. That's a place that for 2 to 3 hours or more, a crew had to go and make a repair just to get on 20 people maybe. And you multiply that by 4,000 to 5,000, and you have a sense of why it took 3 to 4 days to restore. Today's storm did have hundreds of outages, but it was a little more manageable because unlike the weekend, we were having new outages even as we were restoring power on the others. This time it was a little more like we could get ahead of nature.
I think people think that when the power goes out that you're restoring like 10,000 people at one time. And it's interesting to hear that sometimes you're restoring 30 people for one spot, and then you're restoring another 50 people at another spot. And so that takes time to do each one down the line. This person is asking if there are lines down in the road, should this be reported and blocked so that nobody drives over them?
We do try to identify where we have down lines that are what we call live lines, meaning that could potentially still have power on them. And we do work with local law enforcement closely to try to block off roads where there's a danger of that. When we have ice storms, we often have down trees and down limbs, and those bring down lines. That's just kind of the nature of what it is. So there's a lot of instances where there is a power line on the ground that does not have power, and but you still have to take those seriously. You still have to stay away from them, keep yourself and your family safe, always assume they're energized or have power. And one of the areas where we see that a lot is when you're out in your yard cleaning up debris. If you've got a power line out front, you have to make sure that line, if you saw it on the ground, make sure you're staying away from that. But you do want to report it. You want to go to 1-800-POWER-ON or the Duke Energy website, and there's a place to report a down line. That goes into a special queue that we do monitor and try to address.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break. Oh, we've got up there report an outage. Do you want to put that back up again so folks can see that? We are going to take a quick break. We will be back with Jeff Brooks. We'll go to break on this so that you can see the 1-800 number as we head out, and we'll be back in just 2 minutes.